My life changed one cold, dark night at a desolate gas station in the middle of nowhere. It was a story I'd heard 100 times before, a simple pit stop on a long road trip. But that night, the Eerie gas station at the crossroads of Route 66 turned an ordinary journey into a nightmare. I was driving alone, my only companions the distant hum of the engine and the static crackling through the radio. The road stretched out ahead, an endless ribbon of asphalt under the indifferent gaze of the moon. I'd been driving for hours, and the gas gauge needle was dangerously close to empty. The orange glow of the gas station's sign on the horizon was a beacon of hope. The station itself was a relic from the past, with cracked pavement and dimly lit, flickering fluorescent lights. A neon "Open 24 Hours" sign buzzed above the entrance. The whole place had a forlorn, forgotten feel to it, like it had been abandoned by time itself. As I pulled up to the pump, the wind howled through the empty desert, carrying with it a bone-chilling cold. I shivered and pulled my coat tighter around me as I stepped out of the car. The pump was a rusty, ancient contraption that groaned and clanked as I tried to fill my tank. I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as I stood there in the desolate darkness, the only human for miles. I glanced over at the gas station's convenience store, a small, weather-beaten building that looked like it had seen better days. The windows were covered in grime, and the flickering fluorescent lights barely illuminated the interior. Still, I needed to stretch my legs and warm up, so I decided to head inside. The door creaked open, and I was greeted by a blast of warm, stale air. A bell above the door jingled, announcing my presence. The inside was a stark contrast to the harsh, barren desert outside. It was dimly lit, with rows of dusty shelves lined with snacks, canned goods, and various convenience store trinkets. Behind the counter stood a man who seemed just as out of place as the gas station itself. He had a scruffy beard and a mop of greasy, unkempt hair. His eyes were sunken and weary, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. He stared at me with a vacant expression as I browsed the aisles. I grabbed a pack of beef jerky and a bottle of water, then approached the counter. The man continued to stare at me, his eyes never leaving mine. His gaze was unnerving, and I tried to avoid making eye contact as I placed my items on the counter. "That'll be $8.75, he mumbled, his voice barely audible. I handed him a $10 bill and he fumbled to make change, his hand shaking as he counted out the coins. I was about to leave when I noticed a faded, yellowed poster on the wall behind him. It was a missing persons poster, and my heart sank as I recognized the face on it. It was a young woman, her smiling photo in stark contrast to the grimy surroundings. She had been missing for years, and the poster offered a reward for information leading to her whereabouts. "Hey, have you seen this woman?" I asked, pointing to the poster. The man's vacant expression didn't change as he glanced at the poster. "Nope, can't say I have." I nodded and made my way back to the car, a sense of unease settling in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about that gas station, something sinister lurking beneath the surface. As I pulled away from the gas station, I tried to put the strange encounter out of my mind. The radio crackled to life, playing a melancholic tune that matched the desolate landscape outside. But my unease lingered, like a shadow that refused to be shaken. It wasn't long before I noticed that the gas gauge was rapidly dropping. I knew I hadn't been driving for long and the fuel should have lasted me much longer. Panic set in as I realized something was terribly wrong. I pulled over to the side of the road and checked the gas gauge. It read empty. I couldn't believe it. I had just filled up at the gas station and now I was stranded in the middle of the desert with no cell phone signal and no other cars in sight. I got out of the car and tried to wave down passing cars, but none stopped. The night was silent, save for the distant howl of the wind. With no other option, I began to walk back to the gas station. It took what felt like an eternity, the wind cutting through my coat like a knife. As I approached the station, I saw that the lights were still on, but there was no sign of the scruffy attendant behind the counter. I entered the store and called out, but there was no response. The convenience store felt even more eerie now, with its rows of snacks and canned goods shrouded in darkness. I made my way to the counter and tried to use the payphone, but the line was dead. It was as if the entire gas station had been abandoned in an instant. Panic began to claw at me, and I realized I was completely alone in this desolate place. I needed to find a way out of this situation, and I couldn't rely on the gas station or its absent attendant. I turned to leave, but just as I reached the door, a voice spoke behind me. "You won't find your way out of here," a raspy voice whispered. I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest. There, standing in the darkness, was the scruffy gas station attendant. His eyes were filled with an unhinged intensity, and a chilling smile crept across his face. "Who are you? Where did you come from?" I stammered, my fear escalating. He took a step closer, and the flickering light cast eerie shadows on his face. "I've been here a long time, waiting for someone like you." I stumbled back, my thoughts racing. The gas station attendant seemed deranged, and I had no idea what he was capable of. I needed to escape, but the only way out was through the door he was blocking. He took another step closer, and I could see that he was holding something behind his back. The glint of a knife blade caught my eye, and I knew I was in grave danger. My only chance was to make a run for it. I sprinted toward the door, my heart pounding in my chest. The gas station attendant let out a guttural scream and lunged at me, but I managed to push the door open and stumble out into the cold, dark night. As I ran, I could hear his footsteps behind me, his crazed voice echoing through the night. "You can't escape. You'll never leave this place." I didn't dare look back. I ran for what felt like miles, my lungs burning, until I stumbled upon another gas station, this one more well-lit and bustling with activity. I quickly explained my situation to the attendant, and he called the police for me. The authorities arrived, and I recounted my terrifying encounter at the gas station in the desert. They assured me they would investigate, but when they returned to the location, they found no trace of the scruffy gas station attendant or the deserted gas station. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped a horrifying fate that night. I had no doubt that the gas station in the desert was a place of nightmares, a trap for unsuspecting travelers, and the missing persons poster I had seen on the wall only fueled my suspicions. To this day, I wonder about the young woman on that poster and what had become of her. The experience left me scarred, unable to look at a gas station without feeling a shiver of dread. I couldn't help but wonder how many others had fallen victim to the deranged gas station attendant, and how many more would unknowingly drive into his sinister trap in the middle of nowhere. The road is filled with dark, desolate places, and sometimes the most chilling horrors can be found where we least expect them.